A glance in the mirror. Chapter 49. Over the hills and far away. The moving out day arrived, and so did the rain, in torrents. Terry and Anna packed the van in pouring rain at the gallop, running up the ramp to hand in their box to return for another. It was amazing how fast this was carried out. Then they led the van in their car along the main highway and up into the hills, arriving in pouring rain. Being high up, the low clouds circled the hilltop. It was cold, wet and windy, and fast approaching late afternoon. The men, wishing to keep dry, saw to it that they moved in with all speed, and for them to be away before the light failed. That night a gale sprung up, forcing the driving wind and rain through the windowless frames. Windows for the main house and sunroom were awaiting installation. Some were at the joinery shop, waiting to be finished. Others had just been unloaded from the removal van. There was no general heating, which was perhaps just as well, since it would have all been lost. The solar panels were waiting for Pepe to plumb them in, and so they were without hot water. The electric radiators, which relied upon a larger aperture fuse box, were to be fitted that coming week, just before Josephine flew in. Anna and Terry rushed around, taping plastic sheeting over the windows, trying to keep the rain out, and these blew out almost immediately. The new roof started to drip, and it was so cold. The wind whistled round the building, causing the trees to bend over and the leaves to be swept in through the open windows to add to their worries. Thankfully, the next day the sun shone, the birds twittered, and all was right with the world. Well, it would have been, if only they'd had some hot water. With that thought, Pepe appeared around the corner. He was there to fit the solar panel and the hot water storage tank. Anna started flamenco dancing at the village school. Terry dropped her off in the evenings so that she was in time for the lessons. It was always a bit of a rush for her to get home from school and be there by 7. It was a tight fit to drive the car down into the town, past the terraced houses and along to the school entrance. That first evening, Terry rushed home to welcome the curtain fitters, who were just motored out from England, bringing with them an enormous pile of curtaining. It was lovely to see them. They were to spend a week fitting and visiting the area, making a holiday of the visit. Terry told them about the finca's previous inhabitants. The family now lived down the road. Their son acted a little strangely, wandered around his old garden at night and during the day, scaring the living daylights out of anyone not aware of his connection. He used to press his face against the windows or suddenly dance out from behind a hedge. I don't think he knew what he was doing, so he's not violent, just scary. We called him Ben Gunn, a name that suited him perfectly. Later that July, an agreement was drawn up between Josephine and Hassan's. She had resigned from Allied Dunbar and signed an agreement with Hassan's. Josephine then began to fly backwards and forwards to London on a fortnightly basis to offer her clients servicing, which provided continuity, using the expertise and products of London's financial sector to give a firm base to the scheme. This was a near-perfect solution for expatriates, keeping them aware of the latest information and products. With her new status, Terry designed a completely new set of business stationery with an oval logo and the company name of Opepas to reveal a priority. Hassan's paid for the printing, and Margaret Stone gave it a wonderful write-up for a company brochure. Registered on the 11th of August, 1989. The article signed on the 10th of November that same year. That first winter in Casares proved that not only did it snow in Spain, but the water froze too. The tops of the mountains visible from the garden held snow for quite some time, and the sleeted rain rattled the windows. When it rained, the cold wind blew the droplets horizontal, lashing the cobbled streets, turning them into mini rivers, flowing through the houses, in through the front door, out through the back. The wind from the Levant was sapping in its severity, making the unwary clutch onto trees and railings. It really was not a hospitable place. Mothers from the village would hurry by with their long black shawls wrapped around their children, shielding them from the cutting blast. The wind from the southwest swept off the coast, bringing salt air and fine sand particles tearing at your face. The small, stumpy oak trees suffered from the blast, having their silvery pointed leaves torn off, whilst others, already free, raced round the garden, trying to find somewhere to lodge. The doors shook, and the wall plates swung to and fro, greatly in danger of being swept off the wall. The clouds raced by, buildings up to form another storm, then hurrying on. Any failure to hold on tight to an open door found it forced back on its hinges, ready to swing back like the mainsail of a sailing ship going about. In the summer, the already oven-baked rocks from the previous day's sun would reflect their stored-up warmth. The wise walked from shade to shade, proceeding crab-like close to the cliff sides. It made every breath feel like breathing before an open oven door. Woe betide anyone who grasped hold of an unpainted metal bar. The brilliant morning light would shaft through the trunks and boughs outside the kitchen door, into the kitchen, onto the floor, vibrating with the activity of many insects dancing in its beams. The air would smell from the ripening fig and prickly pear. There were many days when I was in paradise. The warmth of the sun, the stillness, the fabulous views, all were quite intoxicating. These scenes Terry stored away, knowing that there were going to be times when he would need them to bring back the still peace that lies much within the Spanish countryside. The autumn air would be crisp, clear and still. The raked-up branches, the debris from the olive harvest, would be lit. The sweet-smelling smoke from all these bonfires spiralling up through the branches like Indian signals, and the ground would crunch under the soles of your feet as you trod the traveller's way, the footpaths and the donkey trails, paths that wandered through the hills and valleys, tracing the land. The little meandering stream in the valley floor would be sparkling and clear, and sometimes sandwiched between the planted vegetable plots belonging to the isolated lime-washed huts, which sometimes held a tethered donkey, but always home to a full complement of crowing chickens. Every drop of water in its turn fell down its course to the sea, not far away, and every turn in the river caused a sheltered meadow to form within its bend, which always held a walnut tree with its brittle twigs and boughs. The panoramic views from the hilltops would be spectacular, reminds one of all the romantic tales ever told of majestic Spain. The valley bottoms held the prize, a fabulously beautiful fairyland, peaceful and still. On the hillside grazed Pepe's goats, which traversed both sides of the ravine. The tinkling bells echoed from rock to rock, making its musical interlude in the day's work in the garden. Every day he brought his herd from a lower valley up into the hills, his route regular and ordained from ages past, countless years of herding the same trodden paths, terraced hillside and rock-strewn valley floor, circling the crags above the vultures take it in turns to keep up their vigil, using the updraft to ascend. They soar up, to glide down, to resume their ceaseless scan. Every school day, Terry took Anna to the bottom of the road to catch the bus that stopped on the coast road to Puerto Casares. The road down wound its way between crags, beside the steeply banked, rock-faced hillside on one side, and on the other the road fell away to the ravine below, past the deserted restaurant that only opened its doors on those very rare occasions, to the fields of coarse brushwood and deeply gnarled cork trees, onwards to the vineyards and salt flats close to the sea. The goats with their melodious bells ranged the hills, whilst the sheep occupied lower ground, closer to the valley bottoms, watered by a tiny stream as it meandered, bubbling and chuckling towards the coast. It was about 3 miles of jerking, lurching, swaying propulsion. All was done at breakneck speed, so that they didn't miss the bus, with Ruff sitting on my knees, looking out of the windows. They swept along the hillsides, rushing past, swayed at every corner turned, knowing that at the bottom there would be their morning walk along the beach, barking at the waves but never going in. Terry to browse among the piled-up flotsam and jetsam, and Ruff to walk alongside the river's the water's edge. They were magical times, beautiful beaches of fine yellow sand, with the sunlight bouncing on the limpid blue sea, just Ruff and Terry, and not a soul in sight. To the right, facing out to sea, was the port and the marina of La Duquesa. To the left, the rocky cliffs, coming down to sea level, just before the town of Estepona and its esplanade. During the day, Terry had to go down into the village to buy vegetables or some meat, pay a bill or visit the bank. He would set off with Ruff following. Never needing a lead, she always stayed at his heels or under his chair. If Terry was in the garden or maintaining the fabric of the buildings, Ruff would always be lying down beside a special bush near the path, just up from the lawn. At one time she had seen a lizard coming out of that bush. It was her goal in life to catch it. The visit to the shops took him past Mari's family shop and restaurant, down through the tiny lanes between the white lime-washed walls of the terraced houses. The cobblestone lanes were tightly cambered on either side to allow the storm waters to run off, keeping close to the shady side to keep out the sun. At the very bottom was the village square, with a fountain in the centre. The restaurants circling around, with their chairs dealt close to the sides, making a circular backdrop to the daily play by the village children, being enacted out front. This was the place where all the village activity occurred, summer or winter, sunshine or rain, with the old folk sitting on stone benches close to the house fronts, the village wives knitting colourful shawls, and the small children racing round on their tricycles and push-cars. That summer in 1989, Terry and Josephine experienced their first forest fire. They saw the smoke in the distance, not threatening at all. The pall of smoke drifted upwards to bend over as the wind tugged at its sides. Terry felt the wind in his face. The smoke billowed out, covering a wider area, making him increasingly aware that this could be serious. Gradually the crackling of the sap in the branches and the bursts of flames from the dried grasses gathered apace. Now the seriousness could be seen, smelt, and heard. The conflagration made its way towards them. Now they could not only see the pockets of flame, but also feel the heat. Planes circled overhead, dropping gallons of water, their tanks filled by trailing scoops in the sea. Helicopters rattled and darted overhead, like errant hornets radioing instructions and directing the fire engines, bulldozers and beaters. It was late that afternoon. It became obvious that we couldn't escape. The fire began to lick the outsides of the sunroom, cracking the panes and licking up the sides of the building, then rushing round the base at the lower terraces in a firework frenzy. The irrigation system didn't stand a chance to dampen the flames. The sudden crackling of the glass caused him to jump back. He turned on the tap. Not a drop came out of the pipe. He checked to find the pipes had melted. By this time the whole village had turned out to witness the event and lined the road above the finca. We ran round with buckets, putting down the flames nearest the house. The irrigation system had now melted. The rubber hoses buried under the soil had become too hot, allowing the water in the system to spill out, all in the wrong places. Water levels in the swimming pool quickly dropped as the buckets filled. The inflow of water to fill the pool was halted due to the mains being turned off to the whole valley by the water board. Terry just had to stand by and watch. It was fortunate that at last the wind changed, pushing the flames down back into the valley and away from the house, and thank goodness they escaped the worst ravages and suffered just 2 broken panes of glass. What was serious was that their beautiful valley was now blackened and bare, with coils of smoke spurting up from wizened tree stumps. The valley was never the same again. 2 years later you could still see what had happened. The ancient cork trees were no more. Even the undergrowth was bare and thin. The blackened rocks never became washed, even after the first winter storms. It was only the vegetation at the foot of the valley which stayed the same. Pepe's goats had to graze in another valley, taking their bells almost out of earshot. Terry never replaced the melted irrigation system to the lower terraces, for the fire had finished off the citrus orchard so carefully nurtured. The fire was an omen, foretold their future. Its frightening bursts of exploding sparks warned of upsets to come. In the mid-12th century the Spanish interior was rustic. The inhabitants were self-sufficient, existing on a diet of olive, almond, carob and citrus, with wheat and vegetables grown between the trees on terraces built up over generations. Free-range chickens had their own guarded area, and those lucky to own land in the valley bottoms tended their seed on small areas of streamside plot of soil and silt. The winter rains would wash down the nutrients and soil to the valley, and this was loaded onto donkeys and hauled back up to the top to be spread for the next year's crop. Cisterns retained the galley-fed storm waters. It was a back-breaking existence, very reliant upon the never-ending husbandry of the land, the farmer just about coping with the weather. When cheap travel enticed holiday-makers, the peasants sold their family lands, retiring on the proceeds. The terraces crumbled and fell into disrepair. As the storm waters washed the nutrients off the land, the hilltops and sides grew bare. Forest fires completed the devastation as the Spanish interior became a shadow of its past romantic glory.